Handwriting was sharp, deliberate, and across its center, in fading ink, was written a name that made Lewis's heart skip. Charlotte. Why would his sister's name appear here, in this private sanctuary? The silence pressed against him as he slipped the letter into his blazer pocket, not from mischief, but from a child's instinct that something was terribly wrong. The wooden box beneath the vanity held more mysteries. A handkerchief embroidered with unfamiliar initials, a black and white photograph of a stranger, and at the bottom, a torn journal page that would make any child's stomach twist. She'll never be accepted. Not like her. No matter what I do. The same sharp handwriting. The same cold precision. Lewis didn't understand every word, but he understood enough. This was about his sister, and it wasn't kind. As footsteps echoed in the distant corridor, the young prince slipped back into the hallway, the weight of discovery heavy in his pocket. Some doors, once open, can never truly be closed again. Catherine's heart breaks as truth unfolds. The car ride home was unnaturally quiet. Lewis, usually bubbling with questions and observations, pressed his face against the window in silence. Catherine noticed immediately, a mother always does. His fingers tugged at his sleeve. His shoulders curved inward as though protecting something precious and terrible. She found him later on his bed, still wearing his blazer, shoes forgotten. The envelope lay creased in his small hands. Charlotte's name staring up at them both like an accusation. Where did you find this? Catherine asked gently, though her heart already knew. Her room, Lewis whispered, and no further explanation was needed. Catherine's hands trembled slightly as she broke the seal. The paper inside had yellowed, not from age, but from being hidden where it didn't belong. The letter was brief, less than a page, but every word landed like ice against her heart. It spoke of legacy, of expectations, of someone unnamed being unfit for the royal image, though Charlotte's name appeared only on the envelope. The implications were crystal clear. This wasn't just unkindness. This was something deeper, a resentment wrapped in formal language and bitter intent. But the most devastating part wasn't what the letter said. It was watching her 7-year-old son trying to understand why someone would write such things about his sister. Catherine pulled him close, feeling his small body shake with confusion and hurt. The letter would need to be shown to William. Decisions would need to be made. But for now, all that mattered was holding her youngest child and wondering how something so carefully hidden had found its way into such innocent hands. Diana's ghost still haunts these walls. William read the letter alone that night, and something inside him closed like a vault door. He didn't ask how Lewis had found it. He asked what else was in that room. The next morning, while Catherine took the children for a walk, he returned to Clarence's house. No escorts, no announcements. He told the doorman he was searching for old reports, but his destination was already clear. The room smelled exactly as Lewis had described. Lavender masking something older, something that clung to the walls like unspoken accusations. And there, half hidden behind a ceramic vase, was a photograph. The frame had cracked down the middle, splitting Diana's face in two. Across the glass, someone had written in bitter pen, "Even broken, she still takes up space." William's chest tightened. This wasn't just careless resentment. This was layered, deliberate. A confession of living forever in a shadow too powerful to escape. His mother's eyes stared back at him, one half clear, one half fractured. And in that moment, everything Lewis had felt made terrible sense. The letter, the hidden bitterness, the silence that followed discovery. This wasn't just about Charlotte or childhood innocence. This was about a wound that festered for decades, about a ghost that refused to fade, about a woman who could never quite step out from behind Diana's eternal light. William left the photograph where he found it. Some evidence doesn't need to be collected. Some truths speak loudly enough in silence. The recording that changed everything. 2 days later, an elderly housekeeper at Clarence's house sent word. She had served through 3 generations of secrets, and her discretion was legendary. Her message was brief. There was something Prince William needed to hear. In a storage room between guest chambers, she pointed to a small cassette player. Its battery light flickered like a dying heartbeat. William pressed play, and Camilla's voice filled the space. Not speaking to anyone, just recorded her thoughts in what she believed was privacy. They keep making space for her, the voice whispered. Every corner of this house still whispers Diana's name. I host, I smile, I survive, but I'll never be her. A pause. A sigh heavy with years of accumulated bitterness. I look at that little girl, Charlotte, and I see it in her eyes. The softness, the grace. They'll love her like they love Diana, and I'll be the shadow again. The recording ended without resolution, just silence that spoke volumes. William stood motionless, processing not a confession of planned cruelty, but something perhaps worse, a festering wound allowed to poison everything it touched. He thanked the housekeeper quietly and left. In his car, he sat for a long time without starting the engine. The letter, the photograph, the recording. They painted a picture of resentment so deep it had seeped into private rooms and hidden corners, waiting for an innocent child to stumble upon its darkness. But what would the palace do when confronted with truths too painful to acknowledge? A prince's tears reveal a palace divided. The family had gone to Windsor for private worship. Afterwards, the children ran through garden paths, their laughter temporarily lifting the shadow that had settled over recent days. Then someone mentioned Camilla in passing, a harmless story about a cooking mishap, and Louis's face crumbled. He ran. Catherine found him curled between two hedges, shaking with sobs that seemed too big for his small frame. When she knelt beside him, he clutched her arm desperately. I didn't mean to go in, he gasped between tears. I didn't mean to find it. She pulled him into her lap, offering no scolding, no questions, just the solid comfort of a mother's presence. I don't want her to be mean to Charlotte, Louis whispered, his voice breaking. I don't want her to hate us. Catherine's eyes fixed on clouds above as she held her son tighter. How do you explain adult bitterness to a child who still believes in fairy tale endings? How do you protect innocence that's already been cracked? No one can change what someone else feels, she said softly, but we can protect each other from it. The truth was too big for his 7-year-old heart, but not beyond his understanding. As she kissed his head and held him close, William watched from a distance, silent, steady, knowing that some wounds inflicted on children never fully heal. This wasn't about letters anymore, or photographs, or recordings. This was about a young boy's shattered trust and the quiet work of trying to rebuild it. The day William stood up, he waited until the children slept before leaving for Clarence's house. The evening staff moved like ghosts, sensing the storm approaching. They knew Prince William had come for answers. They knew to step aside. Camilla sat in the library, teacup in hand, pretending to read. She looked up when he entered, but didn't smile. Neither did he. The door closed with finality. He found the letter. She didn't ask who. Her fingers tightened on the porcelain. He shouldn't have been in there. No, William's voice was ice, but he was, and what he found he can't unsee. It wasn't meant for anyone. It wasn't meant to be found. It was written. It was kept. It had her name on it. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Finally, Camilla exhaled, her carefully constructed facade cracking slightly. You have no idea what it's like, William, to live in someone's shadow so completely, to be expected to carry it, but never be allowed to touch it. William didn't move. That's not their fault. Not Charlotte's. Not Louis's. Her eyes met his, not angry, not apologetic, just exhausted. I never hated them. I just never belonged to them the way she did. Then that's yours to carry. But you don't get to hand it to my children. At the door, he paused. Louis cried himself to sleep because he thought you hated us. Camilla's lips parted, but no words came. For once, the carefully controlled narrative had slipped from her grasp. William left her sitting in that library, surrounded by books that held other people's stories while her own began to unravel. But would the queen consort offer the apology that might begin to heal these wounds? The silence that spoke louder than words. She sent no letter, offered no explanation, not to William, not to Catherine, and certainly not to Louis. The palace waited for some gesture, any acknowledgement that might begin to mend what had been fractured. It never came. Camilla retreated into her duties, her public smile more practiced than ever. She didn't mention the children in private conversations. When Charlotte's latest portrait graced the morning papers, she turned the page without comment. That evening, she sat at her writing desk, pen in hand, paper blank. Outside her window, London's lights twinkled like earthbound stars. Still, she wrote nothing, because writing something would require more than words. The palace corridors were supposed to be safe, protected, sacred even, but on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, 7-year-old Prince Louis wandered through a door that should have remained closed. What he discovered inside Queen Camilla's private chamber wasn't meant for innocent eyes. A letter-bearing princess, Charlotte's name, a shattered photograph of Diana, and words so bitter they sent the young prince running to his mother in tears. This is the story the palace never wanted told. The day a child's curiosity exposed wounds that had festered for decades behind royal walls. When childhood innocence met palace secrets. Clarence's house appeared peaceful that afternoon. No cameras, no grand ceremonies. Just family gathered for what should have been an ordinary visit. Prince William and Princess Catherine were locked in meetings with the king. Charlotte practiced piano with her tutor, and Prince Louis, bright and endlessly curious, had been left with a trusted staffer who stepped away for just a moment to answer a call. That brief absence changed everything. The hallway stretched before him like an invitation. Soft carpets muffled his polished shoes as he passed portraits too tall to fully see. One door revealed towering vases. Another held dusty books. But then he found it. A door left slightly ajar, releasing the scent of lavender mixed with something heavier. Something that whispered of secrets. Louis pushed it open. The room belonged to another era. Silk scarves draped across chairs. Framed photographs crowded every surface. Half-burned candles cast shadows across cluttered vanities, lined with golden bottles. Everything felt fragile, as though a single touch might shatter the carefully preserved facade. But what happened next would haunt the young prince for weeks to come. The envelope that should never have existed. His small fingers found it first, an envelope tucked beneath a paperweight shaped like a horse. The handwriting was sharp, deliberate, and across its center, in fading ink, was written a name that made Louis's heart skip. Charlotte. Why would his sister's name appear here, in this private sanctuary? The silence pressed against him as he slipped the letter into his blazer pocket. Not from mischief, but from a child's instinct that something was terribly wrong. The wooden box beneath the vanity held more mysteries. A handkerchief embroidered with unfamiliar initials, a black and white photograph of a stranger, and at the bottom, a torn journal page that would make any child's stomach twist. She'll never be accepted. Not like her. No matter what I do. The same sharp handwriting. The same cold precision. Louis didn't understand every word, but he understood enough. This was about his sister, and it wasn't kind. As footsteps echoed in the distant corridor, the young prince slipped back into the hallway, the weight of discovery heavy in his pocket. Some doors, once opened, can never truly be closed again. Catherine's heart breaks as truth unfolds. The car ride home was unnaturally quiet. Louis, usually bubbling with questions and observations, pressed his face against the window in silence. Catherine noticed immediately, a mother always does. His fingers tugged